Hi, Mike Nee from Constellation Research. I'm joined today by Javier Casín, Global Managing Partner, Hybrid Cloud and Data from IBM Consulting.
Yep.
We're both here at IBM Think 2026, where actually a lot of my conversations have all been around how do I move from experimentation to scaling AI. And I thought, this is such a great time to have this conversation with you. I mean, we just got off of the Constellation Fast Forward conference. We had 120 CEOs and board members, and frankly, the top of mind for them was the metrics are now real, right? This is no longer about experimentation. Even in your own survey, top of mind is productivity and profitability, right? And they're really looking forward to, from a different survey you had, 70% productivity gains. And so the pressure is absolutely there to make this change. And so perfect time to have this conversation about actually how do we get there? We've been talking a lot about what, and your experience on working across IBM customers, looking at what they struggle with is always just a great place to start in terms of getting to how. So let me get to the first question. With all this pressure of change from top down, what are the sort of the top initiatives that your customers are actually driving towards? How are they turning these into initiatives?
So first of all, Mike, great to having these times with you today. And indeed, what I would say is that the sentiment in the marketplace has changed very quickly over the last 3 to 4 months. And now clients are saying, not coming to us and saying, what is this AI about? How can I create some use cases and so on? It's about how do I really make this at an industrial scale? So
yes.
How do I get the different material results? It's about now capturing the AI dividend. And that is all the conversations that we are having. And I would say that the 3 major profiles that we are now seeing about is, one is big productivity gains. Yeah. And when I say this is not just I can get 10 to 20% benefit or so. It's really at a scale. How do I reduce my operating cost by 40, 50, 60%, depending
Absolutely.
on the domains.
Yes.
And in order to doing that, it's about what we are operating now is take the whole workflows and you understand your workflows end to end. You take any finance transformation or any go-to-cash, any supply chain or any software development lifecycle. That
right.
is a big conversation these days. And you basically need to understand every single step of that process, and you really re-engineer, rethink the whole process around this AI. It's not about putting some AI on top of some of the steps, it's about how you completely rethink that. There is a second pattern that is pretty interesting, that is how do I increase my velocity, my decision velocity.
I love the words.
And in that, because in many processes, it's not about how costly the process is, or because sometimes it's not very heavy people spend, but it's people fractioned in some moments, but all in all, the process is so slow.
Yeah.
Take that, I want to release or launch a product to market, but this needs to go through a number of legal reviews and approvals.
We love those.
Those type of processes that again, it's not high touch on the moments,
right?
But definitely the speed of the organization, or everything is slow because you need a committee that is meeting every Friday, and then another one that is come back.
The friction is all at those handoffs.
And that is it's not about taking a lot of cost out, but
right.
increasing the metabolism and the speed of how our companies are operating. And those are huge benefits,
yes.
short term in how companies are operating. And the third one, probably that is probably the most complicated one, but we saw some examples today, in Pearson, is what new products can I create that are around this AI? How do I reinvent new revenue lines and new business models around AI? So that is also.
Well, and we certainly see that coming. I mean, I love their 3 points. In fact, it matches a lot of what we were discussing with the CEOs. The first thing is AI gets a job, right? Before, like you said, it's a co-pilot, it helps you. Now it has to look at a process. And when you have a process, it's measurable.
Yep.
You have an owner who's accountable. And they actually can start making changes, right? And then changes get to the second point you made, which was decision velocity. I love that, because velocity is just not speed. It has a direction, it's accuracy. It's gotta be actually think about the impact and the ROI I'm getting off of that. And so that decision velocity is all around collapsing decision trees. How do I take the adaptability that I can now have with AI to start simplifying and actually saying, if I just had that data, I can actually automate this whole piece of it. And I can actually probably do it with better context and data-driven than a human would have done. And so certainly see decision velocity. But that third point, we often see you need the second point to pay for the third point.
Absolutely.
You really absolutely do.
Absolutely.
But the board see it as a flywheel. If you don't get the learning and change the way you work and come up the learning curve, you may be behind your competitors. It's an existential issue for boards at this point in time.
Exactly. And when you think about where is the dividend coming from, we always advise the clients to start focusing on those that are revenue generating.
Yes.
That in many cases is about this decision speed.
Yes.
And there are so many steps that can be like now put into the agents and bring this new velocity. And I think that is very rewarding. And the flywheel starts.
Well, what's interesting also is that so many of the domain-specific like optimizations have been done. But the real unlock these days is how do you span multiple organizations, right? Go-to-market is not just sales or marketing, right? And I'm not protecting my login to my Marketo, right?
Yeah.
It is how do I think about my go-to-market overall to get to an outcome? It's so different.
Yeah.
But we know the pressure. We know what we're trying to get to. Why do even sophisticated teams actually still struggle to scale AI?
I mean, there are a number of things that you need to do right in order to get to scale. Starting with, some primitives that I would say that is security, trust, and governance. I think that if you don't invest into those, you will have hard time when you start to scale. I was with a client last week and saying, oh, we have done a great MVP, great first product launch, and in a country that everything works,
right.
And it's about consumer product, has to read some labels and so on, perfect. Now I need to deploy this in the 120 countries. Oh, so how do I do that? Because I need to start to contextualize this in the different client data situations. But how am I governing all those decisions? Are my evaluation gateways right? Oh, probably we need to rethink about that, and because I think that becomes
right.
a problem just to get to a scale. So you need to do that right at the front.
Right.
And one topic that somehow we advise clients is you need to build this not just for deploy, build for the evals. That is the moment that everything like rubber hits the road, and what really gets interesting, because something can work today,
right?
But the data moves, and the data, next month probably the data is changing in the nature, and then the agents start to drift, and unless you have the evals pretty well set,
that's right.
I think that doesn't guarantee you long-term success.
Well, you have observability at all levels. You talk about the data, you talk about the model, you talk about the agents, and how do we actually manage that drift across the board?
Exactly.
But data is so important. Foundations,
yep.
Absolutely. And I think that what I've been hearing a lot from the forward thinking CEOs is that we spent 5-6 years modernizing. Now we're going to be very process-centric, and we'll fix things beneath that and get the foundation specific, and that's how they get some focus. But data is such an interesting part of this as they go from data to decisions,
yep.
dashboards, to really automated decisions. Right? So when you think about good data, what data actually do you have? What's good that actually gets used versus things that gets ignored? Because
yep.
we focus on everything nowadays. How do we get focused on the right data, the good data?
In general, the data of our clients is not ready to be exposed to the AI, but not sometimes in the way that we expect. So I think there is a lot of work that has been done in the data foundations. So it's my data clean, I have the right products, and so on and so forth. That is, let me say, layer one. But I think that then you need to interpret that data. What is your semantic layer for that data?
Yes.
So what does a client mean? And agents need all that interpretation of your data. And again, some clients already have done pretty good job there. But then this is where things become more interesting. That is about the context. Because you can have all
we're going to go
data,
there. We're going to use the word, okay.
You can have all that foundation, you can have the semantics, but then there is, what does it mean of that data in that particular situation?
Absolutely.
And that is something that you may have some, but you may have some others that is in people's brains, in some Slack channels, in some teams, in some different unstructured data. So how do you put that in the right context so that the agent can really operate in the right manner? And finally, there is like this decision layer that is about once you have taken a decision, how you give the feedback loop.
Right.
And you basically are capturing that opportunity to really make the level of autonomy bigger and bigger and bigger over
That
time.
learning loop, that trace that people have been talking about is so fundamental as well.
That is fundamental in any way that you design this for autonomy and for increasing your agency.
You laid it out very well. I mean, I think you're right. It's, so many people focus on the data itself, and I have to get like so much data together. It's actually simpler and yet harder at the same time. You're right, it's about the data. And so often people ask me, well, okay, what is semantics? What is context? I mean, very simply put, what does it mean? And then as you get to context, what matters now and what can I do with it? And that governance is actually very important. And of course, to your point, what did really matter as I learn to make that decision better? Because that's where trust will come in. The decisions get better and I can augment what humans are actually thinking.
And that is the reason why you cannot take like a holistic approach on my data.
Right.
You need to be very intentional.
That's right.
So that is my case, that is my workflow, and work against that.
Well, I love the fact when you go by process, the owner can actually start making some calls. Because it's not just calls on, hey, this system, let's change this data. They get, now you get actionability. But it's also this reassignment of decisions, because that's where the leverage is. It's not that I have the data and I can use AI to help. I'm going to let the AI make these type of decisions because that collapses this decision tree. And now I'm getting exponential returns, right? And accountability may not have shifted. Someone's still responsible. I have to put the evals in place. I have to monitor, right? People forget this part. But the decision reassignment is actually a fundamental skill. We have to start rethinking about how we're going to turn this out. But we've talked a little bit about some of the challenges. We've talked about some of the technologies that are needed. I would love to get some, help people understand, what does this feel like in motion? You work with plenty of customers. Can you lay out a story, a success story of just a customer actually moving from experimentation to AI at scale? And what was it? How did they frame it up? What did they do? And actually some of the results.
Yeah. So we have shown some of you have seen Pearson today, for example, explaining their story. It's pretty amazing. That one is like how we are helping them re-architect everything around building new AI products. I think that one interesting one that we have, one of the bigger utilities that we have in Europe, one approach that they made is, no, I am not going to put some AI into my existing processes because I know that they have so much waste. I'm going to create like a new code to really re-engineer everything around AI.
Yeah.
So I think that it's coming nearly from our first principles and saying want that really like a so low touch level of, human touch type of access so that I can have a totally different level of customer experience. And I think that the results are pretty amazing, and we are starting to receive the AI dividend in that particular case. But I think that the point here is about how I really rethink the whole thing.
Well, this is where external expertise comes into play, not just in terms of the business processes for that industry, for that vertical, but also what technology and data can do for me combined. And this is where oftentimes you see the acceleration by bringing some folks from the outside to help me do that. In fact, I think it was a McKinsey study that showed if I actually take a step back and rethink my process, it's really 3x returns of other initiatives. And we see this over and over again, where that, coming back to the jobs to be done, classic business process engineering, are you Champy or Hammer? I mean, this was one of my first jobs out of college, right? I'm older than you, I think, and I remember those days. But we are really at that point where we're rethinking and have to take back the first principles, absolutely. Yeah. But how do I know when I'm being successful? Like, what are the metrics that matter in this case? How do I know that it's actually working?
So there are a few things that I would say need to start considering. One clear one is, everybody is now talking about my revenue per head count and so on, so that is like a very hard metric.
Right.
But I would say that what is my level of agency? So how much work can I start to delegate to the agents?
Yeah.
And I word that in the sense that we should start having like the human at the edge. I'm saying the human basically works on the specs and will tell you what they want to do, delegate the work to the agents, that is the level of agency, and then you do the eval and assess that. So, and constantly it's about how do you expand that surface of the level of agency that you are having. The way to expand that is about bringing more intelligence into the system, so bringing that judgment that the human are putting into much more intelligence.
Right.
So that is the surface that needs to be expanding over time. And I would tell you that the one thing that I also advise is I don't take this autonomy as like a switch. It is a dial. So I think that you need to start and to set up the right motions in place and the right feedback loops,
Right.
so that you keep that autonomy level of expanding.
Well,
And this will give you, at the end of the day, the revenue per head count.
Well,
in a different
and
level.
I think you said a couple things here which are just so important. One, this is going to be iterative. I mean, most people think that it can be a big project. It's absolutely not. Because your team has to learn, and you don't know what data you actually needed until you start thinking about the process. And people in the process can say, you know, if I just had that additional data, I can actually make a better decision here or automate that whole piece. And then you iterate. I think the other piece of that you said was the learning loops. And it's not just tracing the decisions that I made, but how do things actually work? I mean, so oftentimes, I mean, on my early days of business process re-engineering, conference rooms full of like level 1, level 2 diagram decompositions. You remember those days?
Yeah.
No one ever works that way, right? The reality is there's so many variants, and you have to understand what actually happens. That's where you actually can see where the data has real implications, right? When you think about process mining, you think about how do I actually begin to bring that data back to the AI, the models, so it can actually say in this context,
Exactly.
with this variant, because you know I'm in Sao Paulo, right, versus Germany. I have these type of rules that apply, and this starts to capture some of that human judgment, starts capturing some of that tribal knowledge, which is so often not documented anywhere.
Exactly.
I mean, it's funny that the regulated industries are actually moving faster because they actually know the process. They know what the humans should not and can do,
Yeah.
which gives a lot of guides. I mean, it's funny. It was just it just threw me at first. But when you look at the challenges that customers are having as they move towards operationalizing AI and scaling this up, is there anything I didn't ask? Anything that you think we need to cover?
I think that the one thing that stands out at this moment is that the challenge is not probably a technology problem. It is an operating model problem.
Yes.
It is, and that is a leadership challenge that we all need to take, and really how you really realign and rethink your whole operating model around this AI. So I think that is the one thing that really stands out, because especially for the technology, the bottleneck has moved. So the bottleneck has moved to this opportunity of how fast you can transform your organization, how fast you can really bring your team to these new ways of working. To what are the products that I need to build, instead of, putting more people into the build of the product, because that is now, how to say, much cheaper, right?
Well,
So
I mean, that was job one. Now we're going to move to job two.
Exactly.
New
So I think
revenue
that
stream soon.
it is like now about is what I need to build. Having the architectural controls, and how do I transform my organization, and that is, I would say, the new bottleneck.
So I'm glad you went there. I mean, literally, if there was a top of mind two set of issues beyond the objectives of profitability and productivity, CEOs and boards were really worried about, do I have the right people to get there? And am I thinking about the organization and the governance in a way that I can evolve? Because they know that I could get there day one. And so the question, what are there like, 2 or 3 sort of things that were surprising to you in terms of changes to organizations that leaders had to make to actually make their initiatives successful?
I think everything starts also from the leaders understanding, the art of the possible, how this helps. Because if you don't see that happening, I think it's very difficult to project that to your own organization. I think that, so having this literacy, I think it's also important.
Yes.
For leaders to understand. And again, there is a big retraining that needs to happen, because I think many people has been like using AI like in a 2 years ago AI that this has moved from this assistant to a totally different component. And I think that now it's not about how much AI work that we do, is how much work you delegate to the agents. So that it's a big change.
Well, what's interesting is that we certainly see a bifurcation of CEOs and their executive teams that have gone hands-on. I mean, it's interesting how much, by just understanding the art of the possible, they can give that guidance to their teams. Although I was at a table of CEO of, I shouldn't name the companies we were talking to, but one complained, why am I the leader of almost every AI initiative? And who can they assign that to? I mean, do you see that the buck stops at the CEO now, or are you starting to see the maturity of the organization starting to distribute the ability to drive an AI initiative?
I see there has been a lot of use case proliferations and so on. And sometimes people get also attached to the things that have been done. I think that very few scale, and I think that you need really the top-down commitment to really realigning the organization around the one case.
And so much there are trade-offs between organizations as well, and a singular vision, because they just can't get watered down. It just happens too much. We'll see when the organization starts to make that next level of maturity.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So if I could just wrap up, I think we heard a lot of really key learnings here. The first thing is we really are talking about the shift towards efficiency and effectiveness. And that actually, you have to think about this as funding. And so many of the executives we work with, they see this as initial investment because they know they have to fund the next set of growth initiatives. And that's going to change business models, new channels, expanded front end use cases because I actually don't need a UI anymore. But number two, it gets from sort of the decisions, and so many people have focused on data decisions, to trusted execution. How do I get to governance and make that trade-off between automation and risk? And we didn't even cover that, but that's a different question. There's a whole conversation on its own. And the third thing is really, how do I go from sort of automation to scale? And these are key issues I think that every team that's looking to operationalize AI is really starting to struggle with, and we've touched upon a couple of these things today. Yeah. Javier, thank you so much for your time.
A big pleasure, Mike.
It's a fun conversation. I know we're out of time. I could have talked to you all day.
Thank you so much.
Hey,
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.